So the question is about the ongoing federal investigation in the city of St. Louis and in St. Louis County. Yesterday, a county employee was indicted. I terminated him immediately upon learning about the indictment. That sort of behavior will never be tolerated in county government. I am happy to hear that the processes we put into place stopped any plan or scheme to file false applications with the county and to defraud the county government of COVID funds. We initially hired Reuben Brown to come up with a process, along with the law firm Lewis Rice, to design a process to review every application for COVID funds in that small business relief program, and they did. We hired a second accounting firm, Deloitte, the next year to come along and review those awards and make sure that there was supporting documentation for everyone who got money through that program. And I believe that process worked. There is an ongoing federal investigation. They have the full support of county government. And anything that the council wants to do to double check the work of the law firm we originally hired, the two separate accounting firms that reviewed those applications, or the ongoing work of the U.S. Attorney or the FBI, I would support that effort. We'll see where the council goes with that. More auditors will cost more money, and deciding where the money goes, whether it's ARPA funds or other county tax dollars, deciding how that money is put to work is a decision for the council. We have a lot of needs in St. Louis County. We need to make sure we're spending enough money on public safety and law enforcement. We need to make sure we're spending enough money on roads and bridges and our other programming, and we'll decide what the appropriate amount of money is to spend on audits and review of the processes that are in place. I was criticized early on for hiring an accounting firm and a law firm to establish all of these compliance programs. I was criticized for hiring a second accounting firm to check the work of all these applications, but I believe those processes worked. And at least on our initial review of the indictments from yesterday, the attempt to defraud county government failed, and no funds were lost or inappropriately awarded. And if we find out something different someday, then we'll react to it. But as it stands today, it looks like our processes and procedures worked well.
Dr. Fay, the indictment has Tony Weaver mentioning that he filed other applications possibly. Is there any plan for the county to try to review those?
So the question is about the statements made on the wiretaps, which were part of the indictment, that Tony Weaver helped other people fill out applications. And I will trust the FBI and the U.S. Attorney to follow up on all the statements he made on the wiretaps to see if any other laws were broken. We will look at all the applications that will take a second look at the applications that are mentioned. But what we know is that we had a very well-respected law firm set up a process to make sure that we collected supporting information for all of the applications, $17.5 million worth of applications, that an accounting firm reviewed each of those applications initially and made sure the supporting document was appropriate, and a second accounting firm reviewed all of those awards and made sure that the supporting documentation was there and the expenses were appropriate. So we had a lot of processes and procedures in place. If some funds were awarded improperly, we'll certainly find it. I suspect that the U.S. Attorney and the FBI will find it. They have a lot of resources. They will follow up on all of the claims made. We've got a lot of procedures in place, and I think they worked well. And from what we can tell today, that no money was given that wasn't appropriate, that wasn't through an application that was done properly. And we don't have anything to suggest that, other than someone who got into trouble for trying to defraud the government said he also helped other people. But we don't have anything to support any supporting information that says that there were other inappropriate awards.
Dr. Page, something you said last night at council meeting, you said the city and county investigation. Is this related to what's going on in the city with the indictments?
So the question is, was the indictment yesterday in St. Louis County related to what's happening in the city? I think that's pretty clear that it is. From everything I've read, they're related to the same person. The John Doe in the city appears to be the same John Doe in the county, at least from my reading. We'll know more as this moves forward, as the federal investigation unfolds. But it does seem to be the same person who was working in the city of St. Louis to try and gain improper access and defraud the city of St. Louis, and was trying to do the same thing in St. Louis County.
Do you expect more to come out of St. Louis County?
All I know is that this federal investigation is ongoing in the city, and it has certainly touched the county now. And we will cooperate fully with the FBI and the U.S. Attorney in anything that they want to ask us about state or about local government, about St. Louis County. You know, I was on the county council when the U.S. Attorney's office was investigating the previous county executive, Steve Stinger. I supported all of their efforts. I had concerns about some of the things in the Stinger administration early on, before a lot of people in the community believed us. And I will always support the FBI and the U.S. Attorney if they see something in county government that isn't right. I'll support their investigations, and we'll do everything to set up compliance programs around the decisions that county government makes to make sure that we make good decisions and we do everything possible to prevent people from defrauding county government. That's what we did in this case, and that's why the attempts to defraud the COVID funds failed. And that was made very clear in the indictment yesterday.
Chris, can you talk about why you hired Tony Weaver to the jail job in 2019 and how you view his job performance there?
So the question is about what Tony Weaver was doing in the jail. His job was to be a communication link between families and residents of the jail and the corrections officers. And from the reports that I received, that's what he was doing when he worked for me, being a communication link between the inmates, the corrections officers, and the families. And he appeared to be doing that.
I guess, how do you view his job performance in that role?
We don't have any indication that what he was doing in the jail as that communication link between inmates, corrections officers, and the families to improve the care that folks were getting in the jail. There's nothing that we have that indicates that he wasn't doing that well. We've made a lot of reforms in the jail over the past 2 years. We have a long way to go. But I'm happy with the work that my administration's done. I'm happy with the work of the Justice Service Advisory Committee. And, you know, there's a lot of conversation today about criminal justice reform, about how we treat folks when they're in our custody. And we're trying to be at the forefront of that in my administration.
Something that's in the indictment. Mr. Weaver referred to, I have to check with my former boss, which would suggest Rochelle Wilson Gray, since that's who he worked for. Does she still hold a role in the health department?
Yeah, the question is about former Councilwoman Rochelle Gray, and I will trust the investigation to continue, and if she knew about this, I expect that it will, you know, we'll learn about that soon enough. I don't know that she did, but she isn't currently working for St. Louis County. You know, the federal government, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office put an enormous amount of energy and resources into pursuing this attempt to defraud county government, and I expect that they'll take it wherever it goes. And if it goes to the former councilwoman, we'll hear about it. I don't know that it does. There's no indication that she was aware of what he was doing.
So she is not employed by the county
No,
anymore?
she hasn't worked for the county in a couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Page, you have a couple of write-ins from public radio related to Mr. Weaver. What was your reaction to the indictment of Tony?
Oh, my reaction to the indictment of Tony, well, it's terrible. I mean, anytime someone tries to steal from county government, you know, it's appalling and it's not acceptable, and I fired him immediately as soon as I learned of it. And that's the approach we'll always have. We our county attorneys have contacted the U.S. Attorney, and we are available to assist in any way they need, and we'll continue to cooperate. And I will continue to cooperate with any investigation of county government, just like I did when I was on the county council, and there was an investigation of the previous county executive.
And also, given what has been mentioned here with the indictments in the city and the county, why should residents of the region trust government in general?
Yeah, so the question is, how can residents trust government with the ongoing investigations in the city and the county? And, you know, I think the residents in St. Louis County should watch how we react to this and take a deeper dive and learn about the processes and procedures that are in place to prevent folks from stealing from the county. And I hope that the folks that criticized our decision to hire a law firm to help us fill out help us design a form to apply for county funds, that our decision to hire an accounting firm to review all of those applications, each one, and our decision to hire an accounting firm to audit the expenditures of those applications, to review those expenditures, those were decisions that were criticized when we did it. That somehow we were supposed to move millions of dollars through St. Louis County with the normal infrastructure, and that wasn't possible. So I'm glad we did that, and I hope that folks will take a deeper look at those processes and procedures in place, and I think when they do, they'll understand that we're doing everything possible to prevent people from stealing from the county. From time to time in government, whether it's local, state, or federal, people will try to steal, and we will try to set up procedures to prevent that, as we did here, and we will depend on our folks in law enforcement to help us find those and to bring the folks to justice when we learn about it.
Dr. Page, there's been a lot of controversy, I guess, in county politics about these kind of political appointees that are made. At the time that we were hiring, there was pushback from Republicans because he was an aide to then councilwoman. When you look back on that hiring decision, I guess, do you have any regret about it? How do you look back on it now?
Yeah, I mean, so the question is a decision to bring Tony Weaver into county government. There was, you know, as anyone who watches county government has learned over the past 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, there are political factions and political disagreements. People run for office, and some people win and some people lose. And sometimes folks can carry those political feelings beyond the election cycle, and then those play out when we try to govern. And some of that spilled over into the decision to hire Tony. There was nothing that we knew at the time of bringing him into county government that was alarming, other than he was associated with someone who didn't win an election. Knowing what we know now, which is, you know, hindsight is frequently helpful. Knowing what we know now, sure, I mean, you wouldn't want someone like that in a position of trust in government. But at the time we brought him in, we didn't have any clue that an attempt to steal money from the government would be happening.
Dr. Page, is there anything that can actually be done to ever prevent these pay-to-play schemes?
Yeah, so the question is, what can you do to prevent something like this from happening in the future? I think we continue to make a decision in county government to set up compliance programs and to appropriate some of our funds towards making sure that we are following all of the strict guidelines of the federal government, and that we set up processes to prevent folks from stealing. We can't stop people from trying to steal from the county government, but we can try and we can set up policies and procedures that make it very difficult to scrutinize each application, to require supporting document, and then once we make those awards, we go back and look at them again and make sure all the expenditures were appropriate, and that's what we did here. So there's things we can do to set up processes and procedures to try and prevent these things from being successful. I don't know what to do to prevent people from trying to steal from local governments or state governments or federal governments. Folks will try, and we will have procedures to stop them from being successful. And then folks in the FBI and law enforcement will always be around watching and looking and bringing people to justice when they're caught.
Dr. Page, with the way that system that you had in place, if a legitimate business was involved in this scheme and applied, is there a chance that they got money even though they might not have been qualified for it or eligible?
So your question is about a legitimate business not being eligible and getting money. The way these processes were set up, if someone wasn't eligible, then they shouldn't have gotten any funds. And that's why we asked a very well-respected law firm to set up the application process. We asked an accounting firm to review the applications, each one, to make sure the supporting documents were there, and then we had another accounting firm come in afterwards and review the expenditures and the receipts. And it would be very difficult for someone to get through all three of those stages and receive funds and have it to be inappropriate.
Dr. Page, we have one more and we'll end there. It's also from public radio. It's a follow-up. What are you doing to start rebuilding institutional trust in government in the region based on what's happening?
Yeah, so what am I doing? I mean, we're talking about it. And so the question is, what do you do to rebuild trust? And, you know, this is a tough time in the history of our government. I mean, we talk about what's going on with, you know, politicizing every small decision of county government. And you know, unfortunately, there is a very intense effort to find conflict even when there is none. But we don't just see that in local government. We saw it in state government, in the state legislature this year, a historic session. And we had an insurrection in our state capitol last year, or in our national capital last year. So this is a tough time in the history of our country. I think we need to talk about these things, and we need to talk about them a lot and ask ourselves, what are our priorities? How much time do we want to spend up on gratuitous political conflict, and how much time do we want to spend talking about the real problems that we have in our community and how we're going to work together to solve them? So we talk about it. You know, I hope that in addition to you know, the frenzy around this indictment, and it is appropriate to ask some serious questions, that we also look at the processes and procedures that are in place. We also recognize that someone tried to steal from county government and was unsuccessful because of the processes that are in place that prevented that. So I think that the more we look at what happened here, the more folks will understand that it's very difficult to steal from county government. And if you try, you are probably going to get caught. The last county executive got caught and went to jail. And someone tried, who currently works for county government, and he got caught and was unsuccessful. And I would just ask that we talk about it, we watch it closely, and we talk about all the processes and procedures. And when your government leaders ask for the ability to hire firms to look at compliance, to hire attorneys to make sure we're following the rules, and to hire accounting firms to do the audits, that you know, we don't politicize that decision. There are plenty of philosophical differences by elected officials to talk about why we disagree on things, whether we should have restrictions on guns or access to abortion. There are many politically charged questions that are in front of us as a country and as a community. But these questions about how government runs, whether or not we should be putting resources into compliance, resources into making sure we're following the rules, that's something we should all agree on and we shouldn't argue about.